It's been quite a long run all the way from the bottom, and we've been less than 1% below the all-time high at 69K. The price is currently challenging this level, and you can see how the sell orders at 70K have been pulled out one day before we started getting closer to that limit, as we enter in the rainbow chart to the area of accumulate, possibly next going into the still cheap, and we see a record in engagement towards Bitcoin. We reach a level of 100. Compared to January when the ETF got approved, this is 1 point higher than that, meaning that the attention from retail is coming back into the market. Very interesting to see that most of that interest is led by El Salvador and Nigeria. If we now expand to 5 years, we can see that relative to the all-time high of interest that peaked in May 2021, we are at 44. So that's less than half of the interest that we had at this point. We still need to see a lot more of retail coming back into the market. And potentially this 100 will come lower once this one here takes over the previous all-time high. It's not a matter of if, but when. We can see as well that even though we couldn't close the month of February above the highest close monthly in history for Bitcoin, we still managed to cross up that line in March and currently still pushing. With the halving away only 46 days and 4 hours, I really want to look at the big picture. And in today's video, we're going to look at the weekly RSI right before the halving event. We are 7 candles away from the halving event. So it's very important that we look into the past. What was the RSI and what was Bitcoin doing right before the halving event? What we are currently seeing is 2012. And we can see how Bitcoin was rallying towards the halving event. Even at that early time of the history of Bitcoin, people knew that this was an opportunity and it was bullish for the price. You can see how the weekly RSI is jumping above this trend line and pushing higher with the price. In 2012, things were very bullish. Even though we broke down below the trend line in the RSI, which is typically a signal to sell, there was barely an opportunity to buy cheap at that point, right after the price shoot back up into the halving week. One thing to notice is that in all these pumps prior to the halving event, none of them were able to challenge the 83.42 RSI weekly. And the only time that we touched that level, that was the best opportunity to enter the market if you were sitting on your hands at that point. The drawdown after challenging 83 weekly was about 34% in total, giving you a last golden entry into the bull market. If we zoom out, you're barely going to be able to identify the area I was showing you earlier, and you can see how high the price goes after. Notice I'm no longer using logarithmic scale, so you can see the actual scale of this magnificent move after the halving. But we are in the early days of Bitcoin, when in a bull market you were doing thousands of percent, pretty much the behavior that you might see with some altcoins. There was a first stop at 99.5 in RSI, which is a level that you're never gonna see in the stock market, and then finally a top in 2013 at $1,000. You can see that there is a bearish divergence here because this top couldn't manage to outperform this top here. So you have 2 tops above the 83 and this one that was prior to halving and is kind of the first serious rally. If we fast forward into the next bear market and the initial bull run into the halving, you can see that pretty much it looks very similar. We have a bottom here and we have a trend line below the weekly RSI going upwards and the weekly RSI jumping just like a trampoline above this support. Very similar price action, and you can also tell that we are again challenging the weekly RSI 83 just before the halving. Slightly later than in the previous occasion, this happened many weeks before, but still we hit that level and we get the buying opportunity. In this case, the buying opportunity, the best entry is post-halving event. This next bull market in 2017 had quite a few entries of the RSI above the 83. We can count 1, 2, 3, and this is slightly above, but we are not going to count it. At that point, the all-time high reach was just below 20,000. If we go now into the next bear market and the run into the halving event, we can see how all these anomalies and all the mess that we have here into the RSI. But I can still identify some patterns. For example, we have this line here going up. Up until that point, we were doing nothing out of the ordinary, just jumping again above a trend line as we approach the halving event. But this candle here broke everything because too early we went below the trend line. We couldn't manage to do what we normally do, which is many jumps above the trend line into the halving event, and somewhere in the proximity of the halving event, a breakdown. Around this area, people started realizing that the COVID was not gonna go away and it might be an actual black swan event with global implications. You can see that twice we came closer to the trend line and we got rejected. And after that, there was the massive sell-off. The bottom of this RSI defined a new channel to the upside, and we cannot identify after that anything that looks in any way similar to the previous cycles. So in summary, during the COVID period and prior to that halving, all we can rescue that is similar to the previous cycles is this breakdown here. But the timing is too early, and therefore the whole cycle shifted one step down, and it had to run up from that low. You might be tempted to think that the equivalent breakdown is this one, but this is too late for the halving event. This is actually the breakdown of the end of the bull market. Now looking at the current run into the halving event, I placed this at around the 22nd of April, but it might not be perfect. I just counted 7 weekly candles from today into the future. Actually, the total number of days is 46 days and 4 hours. Now, let's start looking for the patterns that we need to find in an early bull market run into a halving event. We can still see that the RSI weekly is jumping on top of this line. And I've been saying for a long time that what I'm expecting to see is the RSI to come back down and retest this trend line, because that is precisely what we do in a typical cycle during the pre-halving period. We don't tend to have a break above 83. In fact, we already touched the 83 and we started coming down. So in this area around here at the 42K, we were supposed to continue coming down and test the weekly 50. And from there, very humbly, start pushing to the upside as we cross the halving event. But instead of that, we've been rushing things in an incredible way. The weekly candle information that started today, it's already at a level of 87. And now if I scroll away and I show you the chart in a logarithmic way, you're going to be able to see that each cycle we challenge this level, but we never pass it through prior to a halving event. The RSI crosses above 83 only post the halving event, and it always does bearish divergences after that. Let me show you. For example, here you have a bearish divergence against that price action. Here you have a double top and higher price action. Here is lower while the price went from 65 to 69. But we have never been in this area of the chart. So if you are new to Bitcoin or you really don't pay much attention to the technicals, this is something unprecedented for the history of Bitcoin. It's really interesting to see, and all it's screaming is that this is a bullish breakout completely outside the past performance. But what can we say? In this period here, we completely mess up things and we couldn't match to get as high as we were expected. So could it be that in this particular cycle, we are going to exactly do the opposite, kind of trying to compensate for how low and how short-lived was the previous cycle? Remember that the previous cycle crossed the 83 at this timing here at 19K post the halving event, and it had from there a rally into this top that lasted just a few months. You can see here how short it was lived. Right after that, it started building already a channel to the downside, telling us that move had an expiry date already. Compared to the past cycle, look how many attempts to go above the 83 on the weekly we did. So certainly this cycle is starting doing completely new things as well. Let me know in the comments, what do you think is next for this? Do you think we're just going to continue running, breaking the all-time highs, and continue straight from here into 150K? Or do you think that we are going to pay respect to the pattern of breaking below the trend line of the RSI? In this cycle, we broke below, but we have a very little pullback. On this one, we have a much more considerable pullback below the trend line that we built towards the halving event. In the COVID one, it looks like modern art to me, but still, we were building this line and we lost it very early, just because of COVID. In this particular cycle, the RSI seems to be completely out of control and not wanting to respect in any way the pattern. One thing that I'm looking for before we even consider breaking below this yellow line at the bottom is this dotted yellow line. That is a shorter term support on the weekly. You can see that we have at least 3 times, 4 times been using it as a support. So I will say, if we have any chance that there's going to be a decent correction, the first step will be to break below these dotted lines. And then after that, we could start considering when it's going to come back and test the area between 50 and 60, which is located around here. Guys, if you want to trade Bitcoin and altcoins, I'm hosting this amazing event on OKX. There's a link in the description that allows you to join this event, and you can win a MacBook Pro M3, iPad Air, Apple Watch, or even USDT. All you have to do is click the join now in the link in the description. An update on the bots that we are currently running. All of these bots are available in a link in the description that says copy trading bots. You do not need to be part of the TTP community to run them, but if you are VIP member, you can join my Discord server and request to my team to reduce the success fees for you to the minimum. The link to the copy trading bots are in the description, and if you have any questions, you can leave me a comment down below, or you can also join my community on Discord. The Discord server is free to access, but of course, if you're part of the TTP community, you can unlock access to the private channels as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.